What's hiding in your glass? A journey through the drinks that could change your future. Imagine this. You're standing in your kitchen, the morning light spilling through the window, warming the tiles beneath your feet. The familiar hum of the fridge fills the air as you reach for your go-to drink. A diet soda, a steaming mug of coffee, maybe a cold beer to unwind later. These are the small rituals that stitch your days together, the comforts you've leaned on for years. But what if I told you that some of those very drinks, the ones you barely think twice about, might be quietly stacking the odds against you, especially now, as you navigate life past 62? It's not a scare tactic. It's a wake-up call rooted in science, whispered by doctors who've seen the patterns unfold. Our bodies evolve with age, growing more tender, more attuned to what we pour into them. And some beverages? They're not as innocent as they seem. I'm here to walk you through this like a friend who's just stumbled across a treasure map, one that leads to better health, more energy, and a future you can savor. We're diving into 4 drinks and drink food combos that experts are urging seniors to rethink. Not because of fads or fleeting headlines, but because of solid research and real-life consequences. This isn't about stripping away joy. It's about handing you the tools to tweak your habits with confidence. By the end, you'll see these everyday choices in a new light, and maybe even dodge the regrets that too many folks only spot in hindsight. So grab a seat, maybe a glass of water, we'll get to why that's a hero later, and let's uncover what's really going on in your cup. Number 1, the sweet deception of artificial sweeteners. Picture a crisp afternoon, the kind where the sun dips low and paints the world gold. You're unwinding on the porch, the fizz of a diet soda tickling your nose as you take a sip. It's been your trusty sidekick for years. 0 calories, no sugar spikes, a guilt-free treat, right? That's what the ads promised back when Linda Carter, now 67, first swapped her sugary colas for the diet version. She'd been watching her weight, keeping her diabetes in check, and it felt like a win. But decades later, her doctor sat her down with a furrowed brow, explaining how those artificial sweeteners might be stirring up trouble she never saw coming. Here's the kicker. Those lab-made sweeteners, aspartame, sucralose, saccharin, don't just glide through you like a polite guest. They linger, meddling with your gut microbiome, that bustling city of trillions of bacteria keeping your digestion, inflammation, and immune system in harmony. A nutritionist once put it like this: artificial sweeteners are like uninvited renovators. They barge in and rearrange the furniture of your internal ecosystem. For someone like Linda, now in her late 60s, that's no small thing. Aging already makes our gut more fragile, our immune defenses a bit slower to rally. Studies, real ones, from labs across the globe, hint that these sweeteners can tip the microbial balance, sparking low-grade inflammation that simmers for years. And inflammation? It's like leaving the door ajar for trouble, including insulin resistance and even a higher risk of cancers like bladder or breast. Linda's story isn't rare. She used to down 2 cans a day, loving the crisp bite of lime-flavored soda. But after her doctor linked her nagging fatigue and digestive woes to those artificial sweeteners, she decided to experiment. She traded them for herbal teas with a drizzle of honey, and within weeks, she felt lighter, not just in her step, but in her spirit. "I didn't realize how much it was dragging me down," she told me, her eyes bright with the kind of clarity that comes from reclaiming control. The science isn't ironclad yet, research is still unfolding, but the signals are strong enough that experts are waving a caution flag, especially for folks over 62. Why risk it when safer swaps are at your fingertips? Think sparkling water with a twist of lemon, or a warm chamomile tea that soothes instead of stirs. It's not about deprivation, it's about choosing what nourishes you, body and soul, for the long haul. Number 2, the risky romance of alcohol and processed meats. Let's step into a cozy Saturday evening. The grill's sizzling, the scent of sausages wafting through the air, and you've just poured a glass of Pinot Noir to round out the vibe. It's a ritual that feels like a hug from the universe, one that Thomas Reid, a spry 73-year-old, cherished for decades. "It was my weekend reward," he'd say, slicing into a smoky bratwurst, the wine's deep notes dancing on his tongue. But what Thomas didn't know, and what too many of us miss, is that this perfect pairing might be a silent saboteur, especially as the years stack up. Researchers have zeroed in on this duo, alcohol and processed meats, and the news isn't pretty. Those nitrates and nitrites in your bacon, salami, or pepperoni, they break down into nitrosamines, nasty little compounds that wear a carcinogen label like a badge. On their own, they're trouble enough for the World Health Organization to slap processed meats with a Group 1 cancer warning right up there with tobacco. But add alcohol to the mix, and it's like handing those compounds a megaphone. An oncologist once explained it to me: alcohol gums up the liver's detox gears, leaving your body defenseless against the damage. For someone over 62, with a liver that's already pacing itself and digestion that's lost its youthful zip, that's a recipe for cellular chaos. Think colon, stomach, or esophageal cancer creeping closer. Thomas learned this the hard way. After years of his Saturday tradition, he started feeling a gnawing ache in his gut. His doctor didn't mince words. That combo was likely fanning inflammation in his colon. "I didn't want to believe it," Thomas admitted, his voice tinged with the weight of realization. He didn't ditch everything. He still savors a glass of wine now and then, but he swapped the sausages for grilled salmon or roasted veggies. "I'm not missing out," he insists. "I'm just smarter about it." Take Clara too, a 70-year-old widow who loved her charcuterie nights with a cold IPA. She'd laugh, arranging prosciutto and cheese, the beer's hoppy bite cutting through the richness. But after a health seminar flagged this pairing, she started experimenting with lighter fare, grilled chicken, fresh greens, and kept her drinks solo. "It's still a treat," she says, "just not a gamble." Moderation's the name of the game here. If you love your wine or beer, pair it with whole grains or lean proteins that bolster your body's defenses, not tax them. It's not about losing the joy. It's about keeping it sustainable. Number 3, the sugary trap of soft drinks. Close your eyes and think back to a sweltering summer day, the kind where the air shimmers and your throat begs for relief. You crack open a cola, the icy fizz bubbling over your lips, and for a moment, everything's right with the world. That's how Marcus Tate, now 78, used to feel, popping open a can or two every lunchtime. "It was my spark," he'd say, the sweetness a jolt to his tired afternoons. But what Marcus didn't know was that those sugary, soft drinks were laying a slow fuse beneath his health, one that doctors now link to cancer risks he never imagined. Sugary sodas aren't just empty calories, they're active players in a dangerous game. All that high fructose corn syrup slams your system with sugar spikes, leaving your aging metabolism scrambling to keep up. A nutritionist once told me, It's like pouring fuel on a fire. Chronic inflammation flares, insulin resistance creeps in, and over time, your cells start misbehaving. For someone in their 70s, when metabolism slows and inflammation lingers, that's fertile ground for trouble. Pancreatic, colon, liver cancers among the culprits. And it's not just the sugar. That caramel coloring in your cola? It's got traces of compounds flagged as potential carcinogens, and the acidity gnaws at your stomach lining, piling on the risk. Marcus's wake-up call came after a pancreatic scare. His doctor laid out the studies, decades of soda linked to cellular damage, and Marcus quit cold. He switched to water infused with cucumber and mint, a crisp ritual he now swears by. "I thought I'd miss it," he says, "but I feel sharper, steadier. It's like I woke up." Then there's Ellen, a 74-year-old gardener who'd sip lemon-lime soda while tending her roses. She'd laugh off warnings, "It's just a drink," until her dentist flagged erosion from the acidity and her doctor tied it to her creeping fatigue. She traded soda for sparkling water with a splash of juice, and her gardens never looked better. "I didn't realize how heavy it made me feel," she muses. Ditching sugary drinks doesn't mean dull, it means smart. Try a fizzy water with real fruit or a chilled herbal tea. It's refreshment that lifts you up, not drags you down. Number 4, the scalding secret of hot tea and coffee. There's something sacred about that first sip of coffee in the morning. The steam curling up, the rich aroma wrapping you in a warm embrace. Or maybe it's tea for you, the kettle's whistle signaling a quiet pause. For Sarah Miles, a 79-year-old bookkeeper, her scalding hot Earl Grey was non-negotiable. "I loved it straight from the pot," she'd say, cradling the mug as the heat stung her lips. But what Sarah didn't suspect was that the temperature, not the tea itself, was etching tiny scars into her throat, the kind that could bloom into something far worse. Experts call it thermal injury. Sip a drink above 130 degrees C, and you're not just warming your soul, you're scalding your esophageal lining. A gastroenterologist once put it bluntly, it's like sunburn inside your throat. Do it enough, and the damage piles up. Studies from places like Iran and China back this up. Hot beverages are tied to higher esophageal cancer rates, especially for folks over 62, when tissues thin and healing slows. Sarah's persistent throat soreness finally sent her to a doctor who urged her to let her tea cool. "I thought it was nonsense," she admits, "but I tried it. 5 minutes of patience and my throat's happier." Meet Victor too, a 77-year-old jazz buff who'd gulp black coffee fresh off the brew. He'd shrug off the burn, savoring the ritual, until a friend's cancer diagnosis made him rethink. Now he waits, savoring the flavors that bloom as it cools. "It's richer this way," he grins. Who knew? The fix is simple. Let it sit. Test it with a sip. Your mug will keep it warm without the risk. It's a tiny shift that could shield you for years. Final thoughts. Small sips, big wins. So here we are, peering into the glasses we've held for years, seeing them anew. This isn't just about dodging diet soda or cooling your coffee. It's about tuning in to how your body's whispering for care as you age. These habits, these drinks, they're threads in the tapestry of your life, and you get to decide which ones stay. Maybe it's Marcus ditching soda that sticks with you, or Thomas rethinking his wine and sausage nights. Whatever it is, let it spark curiosity, not dread. You're not locked in. You're not powerless. Every sip you tweak, swapping aspartame for honey, pairing wine with veggies, letting tea breathe, is a vote for your future. It's never too late to nudge your health upward, to feel that spring in your step again. What's one small shift you'll try? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to cheer you on. Number 6, the sneaky culprit of flavored creamers. Now, let's linger in the kitchen a little longer, where the coffee pot's still warm and the fridge door swings open. For years, Rachel Ortiz, a 68-year-old retired nurse, started her mornings with a splash of hazelnut creamer in her coffee. The creamy swirl, the nutty sweetness, it was her little luxury, a reward for decades of night shifts and early alarms. It made the day feel softer, she'd say, stirring it in with a smile. But what Rachel didn't clock was that those innocent-looking creamers were hiding a chemical cocktail, one that doctors are now eyeing with suspicion, especially for folks her age. Flavored creamers, vanilla, caramel, mocha, often pack more than just taste. They're loaded with artificial flavors, hydrogenated oils, and sugar syrups that linger in your system like uninvited guests. A dietitian once told me they're tiny time bombs, trans fats clogging arteries, chemicals stressing your liver, all while your body's less equipped to fight back. At 68, Rachel's metabolism isn't the powerhouse it once was, and her liver's working overtime to clear out toxins. Studies are starting to link these additives to inflammation and oxidative stress, buzzwords that sound vague but boil down to cellular wear and tear. The kind that nudges cancer risks up a notch, especially in the liver or pancreas. Rachel's epiphany came after a routine checkup flagged her cholesterol creeping higher. Her doctor pointed to the creamer, those trans fats were culprits, and hinted at broader risks she hadn't considered. "I thought it was just coffee," she laughed, shaking her head. She switched to a splash of whole milk and a pinch of cinnamon, and the difference floored her. "It's simpler, cleaner. I feel it in my bones." Then there's Paul, a 71-year-old woodworker who loved his caramel creamer like it was art. He'd drizzle it in, watching the amber ribbons swirl, until a health podcast warned him off. Now he grinds vanilla beans into his brew. "It's work, but it's worth it," he says, his hands steady as ever. These swaps aren't just practical, they're personal, turning a mundane choice into a quiet victory. Next time you reach for that flavored bottle, pause. Peek at the label. Try a natural lift. Milk, a dash of spice, a drop of real maple syrup. It's not about losing the ritual, it's about making it yours, safe and sound.